Story recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain an action, fantasy, thriller film called Underworld. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. Vampires and werewolves, called lycans, have existed in the world for over 1,000 years. These immortals have been at war for centuries, and the vampires have successfully hunted the lycans, pushing them to the brink of extinction. The war had its first significant turn at the death of a lycan leader, Lucian. The vampires believe that they have gained the upper hand, on the verge of eliminating the lycans from the world. Or so they thought. Selene and another vampire are tracking two lycans headed to a subway. The lycan, Reyes, and his fellow werewolf are also stalking Michael Corvinus, a human. As Michael boards the train, he sees Selene, but she looks away. Reyes closes in on Michael but senses vampires nearby. Before he could reach Michael, he warns his companion that vampires are following them. Reyes starts shooting, and a firefight ensues. The other vampire gets shot, and Selene sees the bullets glowing inside him. A bystander gets shot, and Michael dives in to help. A lycan tries to grab Michael, but Selene starts shooting. The lycans retreat, and Selene, along with another vampire, give chase. Selene goes after one of the lycans while the other vampire pursues Reyes. Reyes gets tackled, and they end up on the train tracks. Eager to finish the fight, Reyes transforms into a werewolf and charges the vampire. Selene tracks the other lycan deeper into the tunnels before finally finding the lycan and shooting him with silver bullets. Selene checks the lycan's gun to see the bullets are glowing. Suddenly, Reyes appears behind her, but she escapes after impaling Reyes with several bladed discs. As she hides from Reyes, she hears growling and roaring from in the tunnels. Sounds of other lycans fighting and cheering in an underground fighting pen fill the tunnels. Before she could investigate further, Reyes appears, and she leaves. At the fighting pit, a lycan, who appears to be the leader, appears. He is visibly disappointed, even disgusted by his fellow lycan's behavior, and stops the fighting. Selene returns to the vampire mansion, heads directly to Khan, the vampire weapons expert, and shows him the glowing bullets. He discovers that the bullets are laced with ultraviolet radiation, making them highly effective against vampires. Craven, the current vampire leader, heads down to meet with Selene and Khan. Selene tells Craven that she sensed there could potentially be hundreds of lycans hiding in the tunnels. Craven listens but says they cannot act on mere speculation, especially within the eve of an important awakening ceremony. Khan is in disbelief, saying a number of that magnitude hasn't been seen in centuries. Craven tells Selene that he'll have her claims investigated, and Selene answers back, saying Victor would have believed her without hesitation. Selene visits Victor's tomb, and Erica, another vampire who's in love with Craven, tells Selene not to worry and reminds her to prepare for the ceremony. Selene later checks on the images they captured from the scene and sees that the lycans were following a human. Erica enters, bringing a dress for Selene, but Selene is focused on the human. Craven arrives and tells Selene he'd love to have her by his side in the ceremony, but she shrugs, telling him to have Erica instead, as she's the one who's head over heels for him. At the lycan's lair, a scientist, Singe, mixes the blood of a human with the lycans. He examines it, finding out that the blood is incompatible. Their leader enters and sees their experiment has failed, and Singe tells him that they need to get a sample of Michael's blood to see whether or not it would work. Reyes later arrives carrying the fallen werewolf. The leader is disappointed to hear that they've failed to get a sample of Michael's blood and decides to do it himself. Selene breaks into Michael's apartment, looking for clues as to why the lycans were after him. Michael arrives, and Selene grabs him, holding him by the neck. She asks why the lycans are after him, but he denies any knowledge of what is happening. Not long after, lycans appear. Michael runs to the elevator, and Selene misses him. Michael recognizes Selene as the woman from the train shootout. The lycans burst through the windows, and Selene starts shooting at them. The lycans are less affected by silver bullets in their pure form, so Selene tries to escape through the floor. Michael heads down and comes face to face with the lycan leader. Selene shoots him, but he bites Michael. Selene drags Michael away, and the leader lets them go, having taken a blood sample from Michael and placing it in a test tube. The leader then uses his powers to push the silver bullets out of his body and chases Selene. Selene and Michael drive away, but the leader catches up to them, jumping on top of the car. He uses a blade and stabs through the roof, wounding Selene. Selene manages to get the leader off the roof and tries ramming him, but he rolls over the car and lands safely behind them. Michael and Selene escape, and Michael sees that Selene is bleeding profusely. He asks her to stop the car, but she shrugs and keeps driving. She loses consciousness, and the car flips and falls into a river. Michael drags Selene to safety and tries mending her wounds. At the lycan lair, Singe mixes Michael's blood. They confirm that Michael's blood is what they have been looking for. They need Michael for an experiment they'll perform on the lycan leader. On the riverbank, Michael and Selene lay unconscious. Michael gets a strange dream before awakening and seeing he's at the vampire mansion. Erica sees Michael and is delighted to see Selene has brought a human to the house. She tells Selene that Craven is looking for her. Selene meets with an angry Craven. He scolds Selene for blatantly disobeying his orders and for bringing a human into the mansion. Selene maintains her theory that the lycans are interested in Michael, and she needs to figure out why. Craven thinks her theory ridiculous, saying lycans would only be interested in humans for food. Erica takes a closer look at Michael and sees the bite mark. She reels back immediately, launching herself to the ceiling. Michael wakes up again, in complete shock, seeing Erica on the ceiling. He rushes to the window and jumps out. He runs for the gate and escapes the estate. Craven barges in with Selene, seeing Michael had escaped. He slaps Selene in anger. Selene is at the house's firing range when Khan approaches, giving her a gun. She shoots and sees liquid oozing out of the bullet holes. This is Khan's latest invention, silver nitrate bullets. Once a Lycan gets shot, the silver injects itself into their bloodstream, making it harder to remove. Selene expresses her doubt about Craven's stories. The vampires were told that Craven killed Lucian, but Selene is suspicious, saying the only evidence they have is Craven's account. Craven then leaves and meets up with someone at an alley. He enters another car, and it's revealed he's meeting with the Lycan leader. Craven is mad about the Lycans overstepping their boundaries, but the leader tells Craven they've been waiting long enough. Craven then reveals that the Lycan leader is Lucian, the Lycan who Craven said he had killed. Selene breaks into the mansion's library and reads about the past. She reads the story of the Great Vampire Werewolf War and Lucian's defeat. It turns out that Craven was the sole survivor of a group of vampires sent to assassinate Lucian. Craven returned with a piece of Lucian's skin as evidence of the kill. Selene then sees a drawing of Lucian wearing a necklace, the same necklace she saw on the werewolf that bit Michael. She then realizes that werewolf must have been Lucian. She then runs into Erica, and she tells her that Michael has been bitten and will be turning into a Lycan soon. Desperate for guidance, Selene decides to awaken Victor, one of 3 powerful elder vampires. She enters Victor's tomb and begins the awakening ceremony by herself. Selene draws her blood and lets it drip into Victor's mouth. She apologizes to Victor for waking him ahead of schedule, but she is in desperate need of his guidance, as she suspects Craven had lied about killing Lucian. Michael appears at the mansion's gates, and Selene goes to retrieve him. Craven warns her that she will no longer be welcome at the mansion if she goes out to meet Michael, but Selene dismisses Craven's threat, knowing Victor is now awake and that Victor would vouch for her. She drives to Michael, and they take off. Selene tells Michael that he's been dragged into a war between vampires and werewolves that has been raging for centuries. She tells him that he's been bitten and he'll soon become a Lycan. Craven enters the tomb, and Erica tells him about Michael being a Lycan. Victor then reveals himself, and Erica and Craven bow. Victor expresses his disappointment in Craven's leadership. He then orders to awaken Marcus, another elder vampire. Craven informs him that Marcus is yet to be awakened, and Amelia, a 3rd elder vampire, is on her way to initiate the ceremony. Selene had revived Victor an entire century ahead of schedule. Selene takes Michael to one of their secret interrogation rooms, and she tells her about her origins. Selene was a young woman when Lycans came and killed her whole family. It was Victor who saved her and turned her into a vampire. She now spends her life killing the monsters that killed her family, treating Victor like a father. Selene intends to head back to the mansion, but Michael wants to join her. She then handcuffs Michael to a chair and tells him a full moon will rise the following night. He'll be unable to control himself and end up eating and killing anything he finds. She then hands him a gun with a single silver bullet. The bullet won't kill him, but it could delay his transformation. She then advises him to shoot himself. Selene arrives back at the mansion and finally faces Victor. He demands to know why she awakened him early, saying the elders had never broken their chain of command in over 14 centuries. 2 of the elder vampires must be at rest while one reigns. It was supposed to be Marcus' turn to reign, not Victor's. Selene tells Victor she had no choice, and she believes the vampires are in danger. Victor distrusts Selene, knowing she's protecting the Lycan, Michael. She tells him she'll gather evidence, but Victor prefers to have Craven do it instead, reasoning that Craven isn't protecting a Lycan. Victor then tells Selene that the council would pass judgment on her for breaking the cycle of command. Craven then imprisons Selene at the mansion, preventing her from going to Michael. Craven then tells Khan that a different group of vampires is tasked to meet with Amelia. Khan is suspicious as it's always been his group's job to do it. At the station, Amelia's train arrives, but Lycans ambush them. Amelia's group battles them, but the vampires sent to meet with them just watch the slaughter. Michael tries to free himself from the handcuffs, using the silver bullet to break the chain, but he misses. He feels the effects of the full moon, and his heart rate and breathing speed up. Jealous of Craven's lust for Selene, Erica decides to free Selene, allowing her to go to Michael. Erica hopes this would lead to Selene's downfall, and she informs Craven that Selene had escaped. The Lycans waiting outside the mansion see Selene leaving, and they follow her to Michael. As Selene makes her way up to Michael, she sees Lycans following her. She reaches Michael, but Lycans are at the door. She begins shooting blindly at the door while Michael escapes. He jumps from the window and surprisingly lands on his feet. Selene holds off the attacking Lycans, but on the streets, Lycans subdue and capture Michael, taking him into a police mobile and driving away. Selene sees the men driving away with Michael and decides to let them go for the time being. She then spots Singe alive among the pile of lifeless Lycans. At the mansion, Khan is convinced that Craven is up to something nefarious and orders his men to check on Amelia. At the train station, Lycans kill Amelia, and Reyes draws her blood. Meanwhile, the men who took Michael are noticing that he's beginning to transform. They pull over and inject him with a substance, preventing his transformation. Once his transformation is halted, they continue. Craven meets with a now fully formed Victor when Selene arrives with Singe. Selene forces Singe to tell the truth, and he does so. He confesses that the Lycans have been searching for a direct descendant of Alexander Corvinus. He begins by telling them the origin of vampires and werewolves. Alexander Corvinus, a powerful warlord from the 5th century, had risen to power, but a deadly plague ravaged his village, and only he survived. Alexander's body had mutated the virus, and instead of killing him, it gave him supernatural abilities. He became the first immortal and gave birth to 3 children. Victor chimes in, saying they all know the myth of the Corvinus clan. A wolf bit one child, a bat bit another, and a third one walked the lonely road of mortality as a human. Victor says Marcus, whose tomb is right next to them, is a direct descendant of Alexander, but Sinch says Marcus is already a vampire. They needed to find the human descendant of Alexander, one who carried the virus but is neither vampire nor werewolf. They aimed to fuse lichen blood with vampire blood but never succeeded. But when they found Michael, they discovered that his blood would be the key. With his genetic makeup, they could fuse vampire DNA with werewolf DNA, creating a hybrid half-vampire, half-werewolf creature that would be stronger than both. They planned to have Lucian inject himself with Michael's blood, along with the blood of an elder vampire, Amelia. Victor is finally convinced that Lucian is alive and Selene is right all along. Khan then enters the tomb and announces Amelia had been assassinated and lichens had drained her blood. Victor strikes Sinch, and he dies instantly. Victor then tasks Selene with finding and eliminating Michael. Lucian draws Michael's blood at the lichen lair, and Michael pleads to Lucian to let him go, as he had nothing to do with their war. Lucian laughs, saying this isn't his war. It is Victor's. Michael then gets a vision of the past and sees Lucian in chains in front of a woman vampire who's also bound. Sunlight fills the room, and Lucian watches as his beloved Sonia burns to death. Victor then enters the room and retrieves Sonia's necklace, but the full moon rises, and Lucian transforms into a werewolf. Lucian breaks free, taking the necklace and escaping. Lucian then tells his side of the story. The lichens were slaves to the vampires, forced to guard their tombs in the daylight. He fell in love with Sonia, Victor's daughter. Victor was enraged by the union and planned to kill both of them, but Lucian escaped. Lucian then says Victor started the war, spending centuries hunting down the lichens. Craven arrives, and Lucian goes to meet him. Craven is panicked, seeing how his plans are falling apart, but Lucian reassures him that with Amelia dead and with Michael's blood, their peace treaty would soon take effect, leaving Craven to lead the vampires. Craven tells Lucian that Victor had awakened and they couldn't defeat him, but Lucian is confident Michael's blood would give him the power to defeat Victor. The vampires suddenly show up at the lair, and the lichens prepare for battle. Craven realizes he's about to lose and shoots Lucian with several rounds of the silver nitrate bullets. Lucian falls, unable to combat the silver nitrate coursing through his veins. Selene and Khan lead the vampire charge and dispatch the defending lichens with ease. Reyes arrives carrying Amelia's blood but discovers he's too late, seeing Lucian dying. The gunshots continue, and Lucian tries forcing the silver out of him, determined to live. Selene then runs to find Michael and eliminates 2 lichens along the way. Craven tries to escape, making his way up a ladder but sees Victor arriving. He jumps down and tries to hide. Selene finally finds Michael, and Lucian sees them kissing. He realizes the war would never be put to rest as another lichen has fallen in love with a vampire. Selene and Michael try to escape but run into Craven. Craven then shoots Michael with the silver nitrate bullets, and silver starts flooding his blood. Craven then tells Selene that it was Victor, not the lichens, who killed her family. Victor fed on them and only spared Selene because she reminded him of Sonia. Lucian appears and stabs Craven's leg, disabling him. Lucian sees Selene and Michael's love for one another, and he tells Selene to bite Michael. His stronger blood would survive a transmission from both a vampire and a werewolf, and he would rise stronger. Selene then digs her fangs into Michael's shoulder. Craven recovers, and Lucian laughs at him. He's satisfied because his mission is completed in the form of Michael. Craven then shoots several more bullets into Lucian, rendering him lifeless. Victor arrives and removes Selene from Michael. Victor then picks up Michael and throws him through a wall. Selene tells Victor that she knows the truth about her family. Victor admits it but reasons out that he has given her much more in exchange. Now filled with both vampire and werewolf blood, Michael begins transforming into a hideous amalgamation of the two. Victor prepares to battle Michael, but Michael is faster and stronger. The two exchange blows, but Victor still manages to gain the upper hand even with Michael's advantage. The rest of the vampires help Victor and shoot Michael, but Selene neutralizes them quickly. Victor and Michael continue fighting, and Selene takes Victor's sword and slices Victor across the face. Victor's head is cut in half, and he falls. Selene and Michael now have to leave and remain in hiding, knowing that the werewolves and vampires may settle for a truce just to hunt them down. Back at the vampire mansion, Sinch's blood drips down into Marcus' tomb. The blood makes its way down to his mouth, starting Marcus' heart, awakening him. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.